All right. We're good to go. It's 2 o'clock. I hope Pat will be joining us soon. But for those of you out there, I hope you're all doing well. Not sure if okay, we got one person. But I hope whomever you are, you're doing well. 2 people, great. This is how numbers work. They go up. Hopefully there'll be 3. I feel like I'm at a livestock auction. Can I get 3 now? Here we go with 3. Hello, Heather. It's good to see you. I think hopefully Pat will be here soon. But for those of you there we go. All right, here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
So that worked. So the technical difficulties have been overcome. That's good.
It's it wouldn't be one of these things without some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we were able to overcome them. But
absolutely.
Things are well. You're doing well.
I'm doing beautiful. So you know what? I will still try to join this on my computer. As you said, I was supposed to do this on my phone, but it might be more comfortable to do it on the computer.
There is a way. I've never been able to do it on the computer, and the only time that this has not worked is when someone tried to do it on their computer. I would imagine there has to be a way. But
I'll just check it out. Just bear with me for a second.
Sure, by all means.
So how are you? What time is it Oh, I can see myself. That's weird.
Yeah, it's 2 o'clock my time.
Okay.
In the afternoon. What I'm guessing.
So where exactly are you based?
Well, right now I'm at my parents' house in South Carolina.
Okay.
So otherwise I live in Virginia.
Okay.
And before that I grew up in New York City. So it's been quite the journey.
So you moved south.
I moved to I grew up in New York, and then I went to college in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice, and that talk about a musical exploration of, Zydeco and all that stuff. And then I moved back to New York, and then I was in Asia. Actually, I was in Macau and Hong Kong for 2 years, and then I moved. Yeah, and then slowly I moved south for Virginia. And then when the quarantining and pandemic hit, I thought it would be good to be somewhere where I would see people every day, as opposed to my apartment. So
yeah.
So here I am. But
okay.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time.
Can you imagine? So what? You mean moving back in with your parents has been an interesting time?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I had a ruptured brain aneurysm in 2018, so I'm still sort of recovering from that.
Okay.
But so it's actually nice to be back in places where I can be with my folks. It's much different than when I was like 17 living at home. Now it's much more. It's nicer. Like I actually enjoy spending. I'd rather not be alone in my room. 90% of the time. So this way it's sort of nice to I try to be I try to help out. Like I lift heavy things around the apartment, around the house, and empty the dishwasher, get the paper, make the coffee. So
yeah, that's cool. And I mean, especially in times of COVID when everybody's just so separate, I have my father lives quite a journey away, so I've seen him shortly in October for like a day, but before that I haven't seen him since early 2020.
Gotcha.
Only
Yeah,
only like this, you know.
yeah, no, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's really been great for me to be able to move back in, um,
Mhm.
even for a few months. I have a younger brother. He and his family live in Michigan, and I haven't been able
Mhm.
to see them. Just like this, we sort of are able to talk over FaceTime.
Mhm. Okay.
But he's doing well. I mean, thankfully everyone's doing well.
Yeah, that's good.
So
It's not everywhere. It's not like everywhere in these days, especially in your country.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, I think everyone is sort of trying their best to deal with
Mm.
whatever curveballs come their way. But I mean, thankfully for me personally, things have been pretty good. Um,
Mm.
in the
So the
grand scheme of
aneurysm,
things.
how did it play out? I mean, did you take a while? So I guess it was discovered in time because this can become very dangerous. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, so for my aneurysm.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was actually going to get on a plane,
Mm.
and I fell down on the jetway before I could board the plane.
Mm.
So that probably saved my life, because they were able
Mm.
to take me to the hospital, and then it was like a month and a half in the hospital and just sort of
Mm.
recovering and stuff like that. And there I still have difficulty with balance and vision,
Mm.
um, and certain other things that are still slowly coming back. But thankfully, I can still write, and I can still
Mm.
appreciate music, and there are certain things that I can still find to be satisfying. So that's sort of a silver lining. Um,
Mm.
but yeah,
Okay.
mostly the last few years have been very surreal, as you can. It's been. I think it's been strange for everyone.
Mm.
It's been especially strange because just as soon as I had begun to feel like I was returning back to normal, everything flipped on its head again. So
Mm.
it's been, again, the silver lining is I get to participate in these conversations and help musicians along the way, and I've met a lot of really great people
Mm.
all over the world. So it's been, I try to look at it like that, as opportunities instead of obstacles. That's been
Mm.
a good mantra. And actually, I wanted to bring. I had a friend of mine who used to live in Hong Kong, who was in a who had a conference in Munich,
Mhm.
and his flight home was canceled. So he decided to stay in Munich for the foreseeable future. And he was telling me how much he's enjoying being in Munich. I mean, obviously things are still not 100% back where they should be, but
Mhm.
uh, but he's enjoying his time in Munich.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I know you're in Berlin, right?
Yeah.
And that's
But
I think it's pretty far. I guess it's pretty far. Munich is much more far north.
no, Munich is much more in the south. Berlin is
Right,
in the
right.
north. Yeah.
I mixed up where Berlin and Munich were.
It's a pretty long way. I mean, for US dimensions, it probably wouldn't be that long, but it's 600 kilometers, so that's
Oh,
quite a way.
yeah. It's probably from where South Carolina to New York. I mean, it's a pretty long. Yeah, it's a pretty long trip, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's like 5, 6 hours by car at least.
So I know that.
I haven't been there for a long time. I haven't been there so often at all actually, but last time was many years ago.
I think that's, growing up in the United States, when you hear about other countries, I think when you're young, you assume that everyone has been everywhere. Like
Mm.
if you live in Berlin, you've obviously been to Munich and you've been to all throughout Bavaria. And then as you get older, you start to realize, oh wait, Munich and Berlin are hundreds of kilometers away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But
And the mentality is very different.
oh yeah, absolutely, I can imagine.
Mm.
It's very. When I moved back to Virginia, having been a New Yorker, it took a little while to understand that everyone was a little bit more laid back.
Oh, I can
Uh,
imagine. Yeah.
so yeah. But the last time we talked was on the podcast,
Yeah.
um, which was where you were talking about your band Rodeo FM,
Mm.
uh, and we sort of went into that a little bit. And you had mentioned that you shook Lemmy's hand, but
Yeah.
I mean, you
I
didn't.
forgot to mention that.
Right, right. You said you wrote it. You wrote it in a post, and I had wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about that.
Yeah, that's right. So I've seen Motorhead like I don't know, 10 times or so, because they were one of my favorite bands at the time. And it must have been in the late 80s. So I was a kid. I was like 15 or 16. And they weren't going through their best phase. So I mean, they were great, but they were playing small venues. Like, so I saw them in a like it wasn't really, it wasn't even a club. It was they played like these gyms, you know. So they went to gyms and just play there, and there were like 600 people or so. And then after the show, my friends and me, we went out of the gym and just went to the backside, and there was the bus of Motorhead, and there was one of the roadies in the standing in the street brushing his teeth. And we approached him and said, "Hey, where's Lemmy?" And he said, "He's in there. You can just move in there." We went into the hall on the other side, on the back side, and started looking for Lemmy. And then there were no rooms, so it was an open space, and I think there was even gym stuff, you know, like stuff you do for exercise and all that. And the band, I clearly remember there was Phil Taylor and a couple of other guys, probably from the road crew, so sitting at a table gambling. And I was too scared to approach them, and I just sat there and watched. And then I turned around, and Lemmy was just standing behind me and watching me, and he was sort of, you know, pretty amused about all this. And then I shook his hand and I said, "Hey, great show, Lemmy." And he said, "Oh, thank you very much." He was very, very kind, and he had very cold hands, but he was super kind, and I was pretty starstruck, and that was it, more or less. He was a
Yeah,
nice
well, I
guy.
mean, that's an amazing story. I mean, Heather actually wrote that would have been amazing. I agree with her. And also, I'll give a shout out to Brad who's watching. Brad is our super fan of the
Mm.
show. He so definitely got to give him. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I'd had the chance. I saw Motorhead once when they played Madison Square Garden with Iron Maiden and Dio.
Okay.
Um, so this was, I think, maybe 2003.
Mm.
My brother had just graduated from high school, and I took him as a graduation present. Um, but they were so far. We were in the nosebleed seats, and they were so far away that
Mm.
this was well after when you had seen them. But
Yeah, first time I saw them was in 1986, and I was really a kid. I was I don't know, I was 13 or 14 at the time, and my big brother, my older brother, took me to a lot of heavy metal concerts, and I was it was also it was a big hall, but there weren't so many people. So the stage wasn't even set up on the short side of the hall, but on the, you know, on the long side, and when we got there, there was no one there. So we just stood in the front row and just kept waiting for the show. And I saw them. So we were there in the first row. And then at the end of the show, Lemmy came up and shook everybody's hands in the front row. And so that was the first time I shook his hand. I actually shook his hand twice.
Oh, there, yeah.
And
There you
and
go.
then they pulled him into the audience, because he was like a bit up on the stage, and then they pulled him into the audience, and he fell over and into the audience. He wasn't hurt or anything, but I think he was a bit pissed off about that. He was not so he didn't look so pleased about that. But yeah, I saw Motorhead many times, and I saw all those metal bands you were mentioning. I saw Iron Maiden and Dio and loads more in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was sort of the time. I think I
Yeah.
remember recently I watched there was a documentary that was made about Lemmy, and I
Mm.
remember Dave Grohl had said that one of the things now he's on it somewhere, um, rather than try to sort of capitalize on any kind of fame or anything, he was just all about the
Mm.
work and
Yeah.
just playing music every night, and he was never going
Mm.
to stop. So I always
Yeah.
took that as sort of a way to develop that work ethic. Um,
Yeah. I mean, he played his last show in Berlin, and we were pondering, considering going there. That was in December 2016. Or was it 2015? I don't remember. It was, and it was actually the last show of the tour, and it was a big hall, and I'd seen them so many times, and I just couldn't be bothered to go. But it was actually his last show. Now I regret this, of course, because a week later he was dead. So he
yeah,
played until the very end.
yeah, no, he did. He absolutely did. Right. I mean, and I remember reading. By the way, Heather wrote that Dio was the first concert she ever went to.
Oh, wow.
So all of us have seen Dio. I think I mean I wasn't as big of a fan of his to recognize all of his songs, but I remember I
Mm,
got excited at the end. He played Rainbow in the Dark and Holy Diver. So
yeah.
obviously playing the hits, but yeah, I mean I remember hearing about how Lemmy wanted to keep his diagnosis secret
Hmm.
until until he realized he couldn't anymore, but that the owner of the Rainbow Bar and Grill brought the slot machine to his house so he would have it,
Mm. Oh,
which
wow.
I thought was a really cool thing to do. But yeah, I mean that's an amazing experience to be able to see all of those bands at that time. I'm sure they had an
Mm.
impression on you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I had tickets for Metallica in 1986, and then like a week before they came to Germany, there was this accident in Scandinavia where Cliff Burton went through the window,
Right.
and that really that hit me really hard because I mean everybody was into Metallica. All the kids were just crazy. It was the hottest band around. And then I saw them. My brother had actually seen them on the Ride the Lightning tour again in a gym, in a small town in Germany, in a gym, and they were playing to like 300 people. And I saw them then a couple of months later in January '87 with Jason Newsted, and it was great. One of the really great concert. I mean, as a kid, you take this in differently anyway, but. If you're at that age, standing in the front row, at a Metallica concert, that was quite something. Yeah, those were the times there.
Which is, and it's, I remember when you and I talked on the podcast
Mm,
that I was really sort of struck that you're growing up, the bands that you would see frequently were more of these sort of punk and metal bands,
mm,
and yet you gravitated more towards playing Americana music,
yeah.
um, which I found to be, again, my assumption was that that was not going to be a big genre in Berlin. Um,
Mm.
but if it strikes you that that's the music you want to play, then there's really nothing to be said about it.
Yeah, I mean, I told you about the story about Giant Sand, I think, on the podcast. I got into old country when I saw Giant Sand and they were playing a double bill with Soundgarden, and I didn't know Soundgarden at the time. I just knew I saw on the poster for the show that it was an SST band. So this was also in the late 80s sometime, and they were still very small and on SST. And I knew that Black Flag and Husker Du were on SST. So I said, okay, let's go. And we went, and I thought Soundgarden were horrible. You know, they were like they were very metal. And at the time, I was sort of coming out of metal, and they were so doom. You know, I was never into that doom thing. So I was into classic heavy metal, but not so much into this post Black Sabbath heavy stuff. And and then Giant Sand played on the same night. And they were just a two-piece, and they just totally blew me away because they were so wild and loud and just very loose, you know. It seemed like everything was improvised, and it seemed like Howie Gelb, the singer, songwriter, the main man, couldn't, you know, tell the difference between C major and A minor or whatever, and at the same time he just played a bit like Jimi Hendrix, you know, very loose, and it all came together really well, and that sort of impressed me. And then I bought a record by them, and that was basically the first country record I ever bought, and that's how it all started. And then a couple of years later, I came onto Johnny Cash, and then I saw Johnny Cash live too, in the early 90s when he had made his comeback. I mean, he had this album, American Recordings, which was produced by Rick Rubin, because Johnny Cash was pretty out of sight in the 80s and pretty down with his career, and the country was really unfashionable. And then Rick Rubin came around and turned him into this total hipster thing. And I saw him on that tour, and it was just great. You know, he was this very warm-hearted entertainer. It was just so much fun and so entertaining to watch the whole show, because usually when you go to a concert and there's always stretches, especially when they play like for 10 hours, there's boring songs or some songs you don't know, and sometimes it can get boring for a stretch. But with Johnny Cash, it was just, there was so much fun in the band and the interaction, and it was great. It was a great show. The best bit was when he played the duo with June Carter. They played two songs together, Jackson and another one, I don't remember. And they were really fun together.
Yeah.
So
well,
that was...
Yeah, I mean, all it takes is for you to sort of be exposed at the right time to some great music, and then on your own you sort of discovered all these other bands.
Yeah.
Whether or not you would have gotten into Johnny Cash, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, Brad actually wrote, "How did you two know each other?" Well, I had the privilege of interviewing Pat for the podcast a few weeks ago, and yeah,
you know Henry. It was through Henry, right? You know Henry.
Yeah, it was. So I was contacted by a guy who does PR for Pat's band Rodeo FM, and also he's promoted some of the books that I've published. So
that's the connection. Okay.
That's the connection. So it seemed like a wonderful opportunity. You know, why not? So it was sort of fortuitous that we met, and you know, I figured why not see if you'd want to do a split screen chat and see if we could keep the ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah.
But, last night we actually had one of the bands that played a live stream is from Michigan called Grave Next Door, and the drummer Patrick is a huge Black Flag fan.
Oh wow.
In fact, I think he has a tattoo of the bars. So I hope that if he's not watching, at least I hope he'll be able to watch this on the replay, because when you had mentioned SST, I got really excited because I know he's a huge fan. And there's a podcast you might be interested in. These two Canadian producers are attempting to talk about every single SST record on a pod. They're sort of analyzing, and they got Daryl Jennifer from Bad Brains as a
Oh
guest
wow.
the other day. So I think they're connected enough in the scene that they can get, so, and
Mm.
they've had like Mike Watt has been on the show,
Mm.
and a few other people I wasn't as familiar with. I think they had maybe Derek Bostrom, who was the original drummer for the Meat Puppets.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, if that was the music, part of the music that you grew up with, it might
Yeah,
be an interesting show.
totally. Yeah, I think I still think so. Damaged is so if you wonder, okay, what are the 10 albums you're going to take to the island that you will only listen to for the rest of your life, then Damaged would be within the top five for me. Definitely. It's one of the albums that has influ or made such an impact on me, like a few other albums. I mean,
What would
it's
be
a total classic.
if you had to do just off the top of your head, like
Hmm.
a top five right now? Damaged would be on there. What would be the other four?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That should be easy to answer actually. So it used to be Exile on Main Street, but it's curious. So in terms of Stones albums, um, I'm gravitating more towards Let It Bleed the older I get. But I love both albums, and both have been very influential on me. And there would be Thin Lizzy's Life and Dangerous, Dinosaur Jr. Living All Over Me.
Okay.
Uh, what else? I once did a list. There wasn't a single country album in there. There was one, I think, and that's the only one in the list that I discovered after age, like say 22. I only discovered this in recent years, and that's an album by Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings. Um, what's the name? Something with the Harvest. Ah, you got to check it out. It's one of the most. It's a bit difficult because it's just a duo, so it's two acoustic guitars, sometimes a banjo, and these two guys. I don't know if you're aware of Gillian Welsh. She's like an all-star musician. She's in that scene. She's really a star. And Dave Rawlings, he's a guitar player, and he also sings backing vocals and sings on his own. And they are like really, really, really good, right? Like really up there. And that album is it's haunting, it's really haunting. It's worth a listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, based on what you've been telling me in terms of the bands you've seen and listened to, I will definitely take your word on whatever you recommend.
Mm.
So this is, you said, Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings.
Yeah, and the album is from 2012 or so, I think. It's The Harvest and the Sorrow, something like that. I'm so shit at remembering names, but this has
Yeah, it's
been
all
on.
good. Oh, yeah, Brad wrote The Harrow and the Harvest.
Yeah, yeah, that's it, that's it.
Okay.
And if you
Thank you,
go for
Brad.
one song, go on YouTube and check out Children Welsh Hard Times. That's like the best song on the album, and the video is also really nice. It's based on footage of a 70s black and white film called Paper Moon. It has nothing to do with the song. It's just someone sort of cut the video together with that song, but it matches really well. I saw that film after I saw the video, and it's quite a nice movie as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, just go on YouTube, check out that song. It's amazing.
Well, for those of you out there looking for, other music recommendations, allow me to recommend Rodeo FM, which is Pat's band, um, who I've started listening to on my own just because, and I was surprised by that because, again, I wasn't as familiar with Americana as a style of music. And I found that there was a lot of, once you had mentioned sort of Tom Petty, uh, Johnny Cash, and then I think I had suggested perhaps early Eagles, um,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
along the, sort of Flying Burrito Brothers along those lines.
yeah. Mm,
Um, so yeah, if you're sort of into the marriage of country and rock and roll, uh,
mm.
then definitely check out. I mean, Rodeo FM has a lot of albums, I think, at this point, right? Like three,
We
maybe
have
three.
we have three albums, yeah, and
Okay,
we're working on an EP which is supposed to come out in the summer. So actually, we're not working on it. It's been recorded. It's nearly finished, and I'm just trying to get my head around a release plan.
gotcha. What's been so great in speaking to you about this, aside from learning about your history and some new music to listen to, is that I feel like my influences are of similar bands. So if I gravitate towards other music, that's, I think a lot of people think, well, I grew up listening to Metallica and Iron Maiden. That means I have to be a metalhead moving forward.
Mm,
But it's nice to sort of see that you've, segued into other genres to
mm,
check out other music. Um, so it's sort of interesting to see somebody make use of that sort of freedom to explore other types of music, and you yourself began playing other types of music.
yeah,
um, did you
absolutely.
ever, as you were playing music, did you ever try to go back to more heavy stuff, or was it always you know an
Yeah, I
Americana
have
band?
no, no. I have this side project I'm doing at the moment with a friend, another singer-songwriter who's and he's also a bit of a producer. So because I produce all this stuff myself as well, um, so we have like everything we need basically, and we sort of exchange ideas back and forth. I mean, he lives in Berlin, but with lockdown and everything, you can't meet as often as you might like to. So this is a project where we exchange ideas in a digital form, and we have like 5 songs ready, and they are more, yeah, they are more they're not really punky, but they're more contemporary, I would say. So there's rock guitars on there, and it's more indie. And we're planning to release an EP this year.
Wow.
Uh, so that's one thing. And then I'm still so when I was young, in my early 20s, we had that band, the first band that you're pursuing, and that's like the band that really shapes you. And that was in the vein of yeah, for those SST bands. It was also grunge influenced, but I never really was into grunge. I didn't like Soundgarden. I hated Pearl Jam. I mean, I really loved Nirvana, um, but when they really hit it big in '91, I saw them in '91 just before Nevermind came out, and then a couple of months later, I tried to see them again, and everything was sold out, and I sort of lost interest in that. So it wasn't really grungy, the music we were making then. It was much harder, much heavier, but not metal-like, more like I don't know, how can you describe this? More like Dinosaur Jr., like a bit melodic and but still very heavy guitars. And the drummer from back then, I'm still in contact with him, and we've been planning to do a revival of this project for a long time and just re-record the stuff, because all the stuff we recorded back then was on an analog tape 4-track machine, so it was really, really shitty quality. I mean, it had something, but it was very, very basic, and we've always been thinking about recording all those songs in a real studio. So we might do that at some point, and that might really be going back to the roots of more heavy music. But let's see. There's so
Well,
much
I
to
mean,
do.
yeah. That's so much to do, so little time. But it's also great to know that you're working on new music. Even though the lockdown has sort of prevented a lot of things from happening, you've
Mhm.
uh, you've got a new album you're working on. You're thinking of reviving this other band. Um,
Yeah.
that's really great. moving forward, there seems to be a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, and a lot of this, of course, comes from the fact that you can't play live, so there's more time to think about other stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I really miss that, and I hope that rather sooner than later we'll be able to play live again, and maybe to go on tour, and let's see. But to be honest, I don't have much faith. So I would actually think that forget about 2021. Um, this is gonna take a bit longer than expected. With all the mutations and everything, it's a big clusterfuck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least I guess the good thing is it'll give you more time to write and be creative and
Yeah.
get more songs and I think just based on talking to people in a lot of different places, um, the fans will still be there when things get back to an
Mm.
opportunity to play. I think everyone is sort of chomping at the bit right now to get
Mm.
out, musicians and fans alike. But I think everyone sort of understands that. Brad wrote that he was checking out your stuff on YouTube. Great sound, and the videos are well done too.
Yeah,
So,
thanks, Brad. That's
so
very
yeah.
kind of you to say. Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you listen to Brad and me, check out Rodeo FM. There are a couple videos on YouTube, and yeah, I mean, just great. It's great rock and roll music with a bit of a country flair, as you might find in Americana, which was sort of new to me. The genre was new to me, but I found that I really enjoyed it.
Mm.
And it, obviously, it's really interesting hearing sort of that the bands you grew up on were, similar to like punk and metal, from like Metallica, Iron Maiden, Dio, and all the SST catalog, and that
Mm.
sort of being exposed to a band that because they were playing with an SST band, it sort of opened you up to different genres.
Yeah.
I think we talked briefly, Meat Puppets sort of did that with me because
Mm.
they sort of brought a bunch of different kind of psychedelic elements to everything and some country
Mm.
elements um, and I was, and then they of course got big when Nirvana played their stuff on their unplugged set. Um, so
Mm. Mm.
that's how I discovered them.
All
But
right.
yeah, no, it's just been I'm still fascinated by the sort of the route that you've gone from shaking Lemmy's hand to developing a band, doing music that sort of seemed to be a split off of what you were exposed to. Um, obviously you have the side project and the revival, which is a little bit more what I would have expected based on the type of music that you were listening to.
Mm.
But it's wonderful. It gives. I'm happy because it's sort of I like the fact that freedom exists. That people are sort of capitalizing on the chance.
Mm.
Like I like this music, and I don't care whether or not that gels with what I listen to normally, or if I'm gonna explore it.
Mm.
I hope I'm making sense and not going too far off.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, totally. Actually, this is something that I experience quite often, or a similar thing happens quite often. So when we play like shows at fairs or at these festivals, well, not music festivals, but street festivals. We play that, and so there's an audience that just doesn't come for you, but comes for the festival and doesn't know what to expect. So
Right.
very often, what happens after the show that people approach me and said, "Oh, I never was into music. Actually, I had a very bad image of country music, but when I saw you, that was quite different, and I really like that." So so people open up to that kind of music when they, when they get the right stuff. I mean, there's of course a lot of people may have thought the show was shit and they don't approach you after the show, but yeah, so people can be surprised by how nice country can actually be, in spite of its bad image.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that unfortunately, at least in the US, the country has seemed to have gotten a very specific, when people think of country, they think of sort of the lowest form of everything. And that's unfortunate because it really is, there's so much to it that's really great music that I don't think people are aware of because it's sort of become the punchline for a lot of things. And you don't really hear so much about like George Jones or the Highwaymen or Johnny Cash, sort of like you said, had that revival a little while ago with Rick Rubin, but some of the other great acts you don't really hear about them as much anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And the stuff that comes out of Nashville these days, it's just horrible. It's just factory music.
The other thing too, though, is like your music specifically and Americana in general tends to lean more toward rock and roll, or like a blues sort of feel to it. Even though it does have, like slide guitar or dobro or things like that. Just based on sort of culturally what I think of when I hear country, I tend to think the music you're playing is more of a rock and roll sort of flavor to it. I mean, maybe that's just what Americana is, but
yeah, it depends. Yeah, but yeah, sure, I see what you mean. I think this is due to the fact that my writing is influenced by so many other genres that I've picked up along the way, and Americana is basically the sound of the band, and that's the mix, and that's maybe what makes it. I mean, that's the case with a lot of Americana bands that listen to Wilco. They're like one of the biggest Americana bands, and a lot of the time they sound like the Beatles.
Yeah, well, I think that's also what's been fascinating, and I think probably has been, whether or not it's been influential on purpose, maybe subconsciously, the fact that you sort of had come from this world of SST and harder music, and that sort of maybe helped shape some of your songwriting abilities.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's again, it's a fascinating sort of study, because as I've said many times, if you had asked me, would I be speaking to somebody who was a singer-songwriter in Berlin who played Americana, I would have probably said that's the last thing I would have expected. I probably would have expected, like, oh yeah, they play metal, like, the Scorpions or Iron Maiden or Judas Priest or something of that, or even Thin Lizzy. I would have said, okay, they're going to be more like that. So it was a little bit of a surprise to kind of discover what the music was. But when I heard it, I was blown away. I was like, this is phenomenal music, and it needs to get out there to more people. So I think that's probably a better. I hadn't really even thought of Wilco, but I think if I use them as the sort of barometer, like when people ask, well, what sort of music is Rodeo FM? I'll say, well, are you familiar with Wilco? It's in that genre.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That might be a better way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't like Wilco actually too much. But of course, there's sort of like a fixed institution in the genre, so there's no way
Yeah,
around them. Yeah.
I think these days it's sort of giving people markers so that they better understand, because if I say they're a country band, people are going to think, oh, they sound like Garth Brooks or something
Yeah.
like
That's to
that.
be avoided at all costs. Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't worry. But uh,
Mm,
but I think that's the shame of the genre these days is that
yeah.
when you say country, no one thinks of the greats. Um, let's see, Heather just wrote, I saw Junior Brown with Reverend Horton Heat and got a greater appreciation for country. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I have not heard. I may have heard Junior Brown. Um, I
I've
don't.
seen Reverend Horton Heat years ago, I think in Hamburg. I don't remember much about this, but he's sort of like in orbit. Yeah, I know him. And Junior Brown
Gotcha.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to. Again, I feel like I'm getting a great music lesson in speaking with you. I've got a
That's more
couple of.
like the rock and roll side of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, uh, you know what? I'm gonna write it down so I don't forget. But I will. You know what? I'll watch the video again to for the first band, not band, but for the first act you had recommended. Um,
Jolene Welsh.
yes, that's
Yeah,
who it
yeah.
was.
Check her out. And yeah, and there's this band Whiskey Town that has been really influential on me. It's been run by a man called Ryan Adams, who's sort of fallen from grace. So I don't know if you heard about him.
I
Ryan
have.
Adams, yeah,
Hmm.
he's like he's been harassing all his proteges, so that's been quite. I mean, you always gotta sort of keep apart the artist and the man, but still, if you find out your favorite songwriter is like Donald Trump, it's no good, yeah. But still, I mean, I like the music. I like the way he writes his songs, and he's been also quite an influence on me. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I'm not as familiar with the music. I mean, I've certainly heard of him.
Mm,
But yeah, no. Again, I feel like in speaking with you, I cover some familiar ground. We talk about some metal bands and some SST bands who I'm really familiar with. But then I also get other bands that I've never heard of before. But but as I've said, you don't need to pass any tests to give me recommendations. I will definitely seek out these bands.
that's cool. Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so you've got there are 3 Rodeo FM albums that are out that people can get. There's a new
yeah.
album that you're working on. Um, hopefully you'll see what the quarantine looks like within the next however so long, and perhaps there'll be a tour or playing live or something. Um,
I do hope that we'll be able to play live in fall, but right now I'd say it's like 50-50.
yeah. I mean, I've stopped, you know, I've stopped trying to anticipate
Mm,
any dates in the future because I feel like I'm going to be wrong no matter what. So
yeah,
why try to play that game? But I'm glad that I mean at least the opportunity to play will come eventually, and in the meantime you'll have new music that you'll be working on, and then another project that you'll try to revive. So
yeah,
it's good. I mean it's just good. It's good to know that there are things to look forward to.
absolutely.
But
And once this is over, I think there's going to be a high demand for live bands as well. There's going to be a lot of competition too, because everybody's going to come back on at the same time. But I think people will just want to go out and listen to live music,
yeah, I
and
think
that's good. Yeah.
you're absolutely. I'll have to get my plane ticket now for
Yeah.
so I'll be I can be in the front row and then I can shake your hand and then you know 20 years from now some kid will be talking to me and I'll say yeah I shook Pat's hand when he was getting off stage, and I spoke to him a few times too.
Yeah, well, let's see if that's going to be worth anything.
You never know.
You never
But
know.
but yeah, well, it's been really great catching up with you, and I'm glad you're doing well. And I'm looking forward to the new recording when it comes out, and the side project, of course. And for those of you out there who are interested, it's just Rodeo FM. I think on social media, it's Rodeo FM Berlin.
Yeah, on Twitter it is, I think, and on Facebook we're just Rodeo FM.
Okay, but yeah, I
And
mean
on Instagram it could be Rodeo FM Berlin as well, yeah. But you can find us on rodeo.fm, so it's really easy.
sure, rodeo.fm to get all
Yeah,
your Rodeo FM related news, and listen to Brad. Check out their music videos on YouTube, and pick up some albums. But it's been great speaking with you, Pat, and stay well.
thanks for the
We will,
opportunity. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a real pleasure talking to you. Thanks.
great. Well, we'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
All right, take care.
Cool. Thanks.